Hi, St. Paul's kids. I am so happy to be with you again. Today I'm going to talk about a special Sunday, comes once a year. It's this coming Sunday, November 1st, and it's called All Saints' Day. It's the day after Halloween. I hope you had a great Halloween. This day is a day that is set apart for us to remember the people who have passed away, who are now up in heaven living with God, and helps us to think of the stories that they told us and the times that we shared together, and to remember them, to think about them, and kind of to realize how much we love them. It's a day that if you're in church, you can raise your hand or call out their name, and a bell will toll after each person's name, just recognizing all the saints up in heaven. So today I'm going to read you a special book. The name of the book is The Name Quilt. And this is a book about remembering. This is the story of a little girl, Sadie, who lives near a city, and her grandma lives on a farm, and her grandpa had passed away. And every summer, Sadie's invited out to stay for a part of the summer with her grandma. And she loves it because grandma has a farm and she gets to do all these fun things. It begins summer evenings after Sadie and grandma chased fireflies and drank lemonade and wished on the very first star they saw up in the sky, came the best part of vacations at grandma's. Let's see what she thinks the best part is. Every single night, Sadie made a nest in a feather bed, and Grandma tucked Sadie in, covering her with the name quilt. The name quilt was made of little patches, like Grandma's other quilts, but the name quilt had names on it too. Sewn into all the different patches were tiny stitches with different colored threads, and every name had a story. Sadie would find a name on the quilt and trace the letters with her fingers. Francis, she would say. Grandma, tell me about Francis. And Grandma thought, oh, that's a good story. So, Francis, that was your grandpa's name, Grandma would say. He died when you were just a little thing. When your mama was little, he used to take her up to the woods to get walnuts. Want to go to the woods, he'd say, and up they'd go. And they'd shake the tree and shake the branches that they could reach to knock the walnuts down. Your mama just loved going up to that walnut tree. They'd bring back down, and I would make something good with the walnuts that they had collected. Sadie found another name. This one was in fancy blue stitching. Tell me about Avenel, Sadie said. That's your Aunt Nell, your mama's younger sister. She used to ride on hogs. You know, hogs are great big pigs weighing around 300 pounds. This patch here with the little pink roses on it is from a dress that she ripped one day when she was out riding a hog and fell off in the mud. You remind me a lot of your Aunt Nell, Grandma said with a smile. Good thing we don't have any hogs around here. Grandma had a million stories in that quilt. There was a piece of a skirt Sadie's mama got blackberry juice on when she was a little girl. I remember that she was feeding pie crust to our cat. Kind of a funny thing to feed to a cat, isn't it? There was even a piece of Grandma's wedding dress, though it didn't look much like wedding dresses from today. It wasn't white. We didn't have a lot of money for fancy dresses back then, Grandma said, so my mama made my wedding dress and my sister's. That is your great aunt Ida, by the way. And we both went to the garden and picked a bouquet of flowers for our wedding. It was a wonderful, wonderful day. I think it's a little bit simpler than weddings are today. Even after Grandma kissed Sadie goodnight and left the room, Sadie could still trace the letters of the names in the dark. They felt like friends if she ever got lonesome listening to the crickets or the owls hooting. It was something. The following day, Sadie, doing cartwheels in the garden, said, "What are we going to do today, Grandma?" Grandma suggested maybe they'd go fishing up at the pond. "But I have to do a little bit of work first." So Sadie helped Grandma feed the geese and gather all the eggs. Then they heated up water and filled an old tub for Grandma to do some washing. She washed all the sheets and hung them out to dry. And she also hung the name quilt out to air over the clothesline. They'll get a good airing, and they'll smell nice and fresh when we go back to sleep tonight. There they are, hanging up the name quilt on the line. And I think they're going to be off to go fishing. Let's see. Grandma picked up some sandwiches and put them in the basket with lemonade. Sadie dug some worms, and Grandma put her fishing dress on, and Sadie put on Grandpa's old hat. And up they went to the pond. They fished all afternoon, but the fish weren't biting. They didn't catch a single fish, but they had fun laying in the grass, laughing and telling stories together. As the afternoon went on, the sky got awfully dark and the wind started really picking up. Grandma said to Sadie, "Gather up the picnic basket and let's hurry on home." They hurried across the field. The wind was really tearing. When they got back to the house, everything was fine and in one piece, except the whole clothesline, the sheets, the blankets, and the name quilt. The beautiful name quilt had all blown away. Nothing was left but the clothes pole. The wind was really something. Grandma and Sadie spent the rest of the day picking up the yard, looking all over for the name quilt. No clothesline, no name quilt. Grandma made up the beds with some old sheets, had supper, and then they both got ready to go to bed. Grandma tucked Sadie in and said, "So, what story do you want to hear tonight?" "But Grandma," Sadie said, "it's gone. The quilt is gone, and all the stories." And she started to cry. "Hush, shh, it's okay," Grandma said, patting Sadie's hand. You think I need the quilt to remember all those stories? No, they're right here in my heart. I remember every one of them. Just listen, you'll see. So, do you want a story tonight or not?" Sadie closed her eyes and tried very hard to see the quilt. And she picked a square that had the letters Ida, I-D-A, in her mind. "Tell me the story about Ida." Grandma smiled. "Did I ever tell you how Ida ran over a hornet's nest? And she just kept running as fast as she could, and she never got stung." Sadie closed her eyes again and traced another name. "Joseph," she said. "Tell me about the time Uncle Joseph caught the catfish at the fishing pond. He got so excited catching his very first fish, a catfish, that he fell into the pond and came home dripping wet." My first fish that I caught was also a catfish. It was really very strange looking. Anyway, they sat up half the night telling story after story after story, remembering one name after another. Pretty soon, it was getting really late, and Grandma said, "We had better get to bed. Tomorrow morning, we'll see what's what. You've got all those names inside and stories too. But it might be fun to make a new quilt. We'll see." And that's them telling stories, even without the name quilt being there, but imagining that it was there and having such a good time. The day after the big wind, Sadie got Grandma's scrap bag. Grandma got out her scissors, a ruler, a spool of thread, and 2 needles. Together they started a brand new quilt. It had a piece of Grandma's best fishing dress and a piece of the shirt that Sadie tore when they were racing through the yard one day. Here they are, getting ready to start the new quilt. Summer evenings after Grandma and Sadie counted crickets and drank lemonade and of course wished on the very first star they saw in the summer night, they worked on the quilt. By the end of summer, they had stitched together all the scraps and sewed on all the names from the quilt that the wind had taken away. It was looking wonderful. Then they attached a new name on the name quilt too, right in the center on a piece of blue fabric covered with yellow stars. Grandma helped Sadie sew on her very own name. And that's the end of the story. So these are stories that Grandma remembered about people she loved very, very much. And it's kind of fun to think about telling stories. Ask your mom or your dad to tell you stories about their parents or what it was like when they were growing up. And always remember that the special people who've gone ahead of you and died and they're living in heaven, those people, when it comes to All Saints' Day, are the people that especially you will remember. So fold your hands, bow your head, and I'll say a short prayer for you to listen to. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the people, all the saints that went ahead of us, and we will try very hard to follow their example. Help me to remember them. Help me to remember all the stories and the fun things they shared and told us. Amen. All right. So remember, we're still in the pandemic, so you need to wear your mask, stay socially distanced. Some of you are in school part-time, but very important to keep washing your hands. Just do your best. I'm counting on you. I know you can do it. Remember how much I love you and how much I miss you. And, yep, God and Jesus love you too. Talk to you soon. Bye.